Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about prayer. Specifically, I want to explain why we as humans need prayer so much, and I want to use this discussion to prioritize you setting aside time for prayer in your daily life. So let's waste no more time and just get right into it. So over the past few weeks, I've really started to notice how much of my life is dominated by noise. There's always so much going on in my personal life, at work, and just in the country, on the news, how much is constantly happening on the news trying to grab my attention. Um, and even in times when I feel like there's some opportunity to kind of just step back from everything and relax and reflect, I often find myself filling that time with even more noise, going on social media, scrolling through reels, pulling up a YouTube video, playing video games, watching the news, or scrolling through the news. I know a lot of people use Twitter. I don't use Twitter, but just finding ways of following the news. So the world is really full of distractions. And I found myself especially prone to this over the past few weeks, especially after the Charlie Kirk assassination. Everyone on the left, on the right, in the Christian YouTube scene, everyone put out some video on this, and it was filling my feed, and I'm like, I need to hear everyone's response to this. I just need to hear all of this. I need to know exactly what's going on with the shooter. Who is this person? What is everyone's take? Are the messages real? Are the messages I needed to know everything. And I was just getting so sucked into this rabbit hole and trying to hear everyone's take and hear everyone's weird theories about everything going on, and I don't know. And it's good to be informed, and it's also good to be busy, like in your personal life and at work. But when noise begins to pervade every single aspect of life, I start feeling very overwhelmed, start feeling anxious, and start feeling constantly distracted. The truth is, we actually naturally seek out this noise because I think we fear the boredom of silence. However, we actually have this very desperate need for stillness and silence to be added into the rhythm of our lives every day, or very frequently, at least in our lives. We can't go through life at 1,000,000 miles an hour and just push through when things get hard. Just work harder when you start feeling tired or when you start feeling overwhelmed. Just get through things quicker. We can't constantly seek stimulation and expect it to constantly fulfill us. We get bored of things after a while. We get overstimulated. We get overwhelmed and burnt out in life so easily, and we can often become aimless when we're constantly hearing all this noise and seeking all this stimulation without ever taking a step back to reflect on our purpose. And this actually helps us understand why God instituted the Sabbath, which is just a weekly day of rest, and then why the Bible also so often tells us to be still, like in Psalm 46 and Exodus 14, or wait in silence in Psalm 62. And that there is a time to be silent, and in Ecclesiastes 3. And science has even begun to catch on to this, as study after study demonstrate the positive impacts of practices like meditation, that practices like meditation have on our mental health, on our stress and anxiety, and on our ability to focus. We also always need time to step back and reflect on our past and strategize for our future. Action without strategy is ultimately aimless, purposeless, and it's just not effective. So we really can see that we have this deep need for regular silence and stillness that is especially pronounced in our modern world full of distractions. And I think prayer is a perfect example of a practice that can add regular science to your life. You can just put away your phone, turn off the TV, put everything to the side, and just focus on prayer. Spend some time talking to God, thanking Him, glorifying Him, reflecting with Him, and asking Him for things. Though we can talk about this a little bit later. A lot of times for me, I don't always focus on asking for specific things, like asking for money or asking for specific things like that. But we'll talk about that a little bit. In fact, in Philippians, Paul even suggests that prayer is the answer to anxiety when he discusses anxiety in Philippians. He says, "Do not be anxious about everything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ." So when you feel anxious, Paul's suggestion is to go into prayer. Pray to God, request things of him, and with thanksgiving, thank God, and God will provide you peace. Put your anxieties in God's hand, and he will give you this supernatural peace. But when thinking about silence, why specifically prayer? Why should we focus on prayer? What makes prayer stand out as kind of this preferred way to confront the noise and anxiety of life? I think the key point here is to consider how our silence is being filled. In the case of meditation, the silence is usually being filled with an attempt to empty the mind and focus on breathing, for example. And this is good. Like, the science backs meditation as a practice for helping with stress and anxiety. And because it does fulfill our need for silence, helps us recover, helps us focus. However, I find that meditation often leads me into a state of mental wandering, where my mind just constantly jumps from subject to subject, sometimes unintentionally even producing more noise. If I'm thinking about politics or the news, for example, and my mind just may automatically jump to that, and the meditation might not be as effective. I think this is also similarly true with journaling, which is another way that I find silence can enter into life, that you can make a regular practice of silence. Once again, it's a great practice. I actually often utilize journaling while praying, like writing down prayers and stuff like that. And it allows for silence and reflection. However, I find journaling can often be heavily conditioned by the noise of the day. And when it's very unstructured, it can bounce from subject to subject, once again, producing more noise. But in the case of prayer, the silence is being filled with contemplation of God. Your silence is being filled with God. You're directing yourself to God in this silence. And that ensures that in our times of silence, the times where we reflect, strategize, and reflect, these times are ultimately grounded in God. They're focused on God. They're aligned with God. We're designed by God in His image with the purpose of glorifying Him through our work, through our good works. By grounding our times of silence in God, specifically dedicating the time to God, we align our strategy for living and our reflection with God and with our true nature and with our true purpose of glorifying Him through our good works. We ultimately direct our minds toward God and His will for our lives, which allows us to center our day-to-day life around God, allowing us to live into our true purpose for being. And this is what I think prayer is about. A lot of times people talk about it as if you're asking God for specific things, like, "Oh God, please make me rich," or "Oh God, please give me the trad wife, the 5'0" trad wife who will let me play video games until 2 a.m. every night." It's not helpful. Sorry if that was cringe. I thought that would be funny. Yeah, I think we need to think about prayer more as directing our minds toward God, as contemplating God, reflecting on Him, and ultimately asking for His will to be done. And we can kind of see this in Jesus' life, where right before He was arrested, He turned to prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and He said to His disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." And talking with him, Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." And going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "So could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again, for the second time, he went away and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done." And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for a third time, saying the same words again. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, "Sleep and take your rest later. See, the hour is at hand. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." And here, what we ultimately can see is Christ in his most anxious moments, right before he's going to be arrested and crucified. He turns to God in prayer. He places his anxieties in the hands of God, as Paul later suggests that we do. And he prays ultimately that the will of God be done. That the will of God be done. Your will be done. Which I think is ultimately how we should pray. We can ask God for things. We can ask for very specific things. But we should ultimately pray that God's will be done. A better type of prayer for the cringy kid asking for the trad wife that lets him play video games until 2 a.m. Would be, "Make me into a better man that can attract a woman, that can help me find a wife." That would be a better prayer than whining to God and asking these specific non-reflective things. We ultimately should try to ask that God's will be done, that we can become a more virtuous person, and we should contemplate God in our prayer more than demanding these hyper-specific things. Yeah, and I think we see this in Jesus, where he says he's struggling with this and he's anxious. He's going to the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's extremely anxious, and he just prays that. Well, he says, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." And I think that's how we should pray. Like, a lot of times our own desires can take us away from God's will, and ultimately we should be aligned with God's will. His will is ultimately what's going to fulfill us. And that's what I think prayer can be so helpful for. It can be so helpful for aligning our lives with his will and focusing on that rather than just our own things that we think about day to day, and our own random desires and whims that come up day to day. But yeah, so that is for that section. And next, I want to kind of reflect on my own life and how prayer has impacted me in my own life. So the other day, I was praying to the Theotokos, and I began to smell something. I smelt a very distinct smell of incense, and I could feel it. I could feel it burning in my lungs, and this was a profound experience for me, praying to the Theotokos about the intercession of the saints. And because of that, I figured I have to convert to Eastern Orthodoxy now. Protestant, sorry. Okay, well, we're done with that bit. If you know what that's referencing, you know it's a little esoteric, but if you watch enough Christian content, you're aware. But so in my own life, I've often felt like I do not have that much time for prayer. There's so much I need to get done on any given day that prayer has never really been a priority for me. Since becoming Christian again, right around a year and a half ago, I never really developed a consistent prayer life. Life just felt very busy. Prayer felt unimportant in just the busyness of the day-to-day life. However, last week I really began prioritizing it. For right around 30 minutes after work each day, so not even that long of a time. It's time that I probably would have spent scrolling anyways. I just got rid of all distractions, sat in a silent room, and I prayed. I'd usually just start and end with the Lord's Prayer, and during the time of my prayer, I would just pray about whatever came to mind, focusing on God, of course, thanking and praising God, asking for help, and then often I find this to be a great practice is just writing down some of my prayers and reflections that come to me while I'm just contemplating and focusing on God. It just was great because it dedicated this time to a focus on God. And the results have surprised me. It's been subtle, as all things as it should be. I feel as though I would be skeptical if I prayed 30 minutes a day for a week and suddenly my whole life changed. Everything changed in life, but no. But the results did surprise me. Throughout the week, I felt a lot more focused, calm, and energetic throughout my days at work. I also contributed a lot more during my Bible study last week, where usually I tend to be very quiet and just give occasional little rants or just little things that I reflected on and wrote down, usually before the Bible study itself, and just rant about that. But this time I was a lot more conversational. I was kind of engaging with the group a lot more. I felt a lot more focused and interested, which was cool. And then I've also noticed myself randomly throwing in prayer throughout the day. Literally just going to the bathroom, I'll just throw in a random prayer. Or I don't know, just driving, throwing a random prayer. Any moment when don't have to talk with people, or don't have to think about anything, just throw in a prayer. And then, so it's all very subtle, but I do feel like all of this had a positive impact on my life. And I find myself getting more excited for prayer time after work, which really surprises me. I didn't really expect to be excited to go and pray. I felt like it would be more, difficult, and then I have to force myself constantly. But it's also definitely a newer practice for me, so I haven't cultivated the discipline for it yet that I know I'll probably need if I want to continue. But I do feel really good about the positive impact that it's had so far in me, that I've seen so far. So that is all that I have for today. I highly recommend you go pray, just to reiterate the point, as the benefits of silence and alignment with and contemplation of God are hard to express fully without the experience. But time to go pray. I have to go pray now. So I'm going to open it up to the comment section and get going. So thanks for watching. If you like the video, go down and hit the like button. There's also a subscribe button if you want to be notified of my content. Patreon is also down below. Go throw some money at me. Would love that. I'll pray that you guys give me money on Patreon. Then join the Discord as well. It's still quiet, but I mean, the more the merrier. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Peace.